Ready, set, art. Today's sketchbook assignment is the strong animals, And I picked a praying mantis, a frilled lizard. That's for part one. Part two will be a markhor. It's this interesting goat. Look at all that hair and these interesting horn shapes. And then a harpy eagle, the biggest eagle in the world. They're gigantic. Now, what is this for? Well, I wanted to pick animals that had a lot of structure to them as inspiration for our animal in the cubism style. And the animal that I picked, this is also known as a strong animal, is a horse. So I took a horse sketch and I translated it into a cubism design, and that's what you see right here. You can see why it's called cubism. You know, it has these kind of strong, angular, geometric type designs. It reminds you of a box. And that's how we kind of define cubism. Cubism is taking a box and flattening it out so you could see all sides. We should see some geometric shapes like this, but then we should see some three-dimensional parts to it. Like, see how the head almost looks like a box, and kind of in here too. So we got to see all of those elements. But we got to practice drawing strong animals first. In another video, I'll show you how to take a sketch of a realistic animal and translate it into a cubism one. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to put this over here, because that's for another video. And let me get my blank paper set up, just normal computer paper. Okay. And now I'm ready to go. I have it in front of me just so I can angle all the access lines, and that's just good practice. Please do not hold your paper to the computer screen and trace it. I can tell. Alright? It's kind of wiggly and somehow it's all correct proportionally. And I should see these access lines when you're drawing. The whole point of doing those access lines is so that you can apply that same concept to any animal. And if you're copying and tracing, then you're not learning the concept. Alright, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to hold my pencil to the angle of the body and compare it to the drawing. Same with the head. Put that there. And then I'm ready to put in some basic shapes. The head's almost like a funky diamond. And then the mid part of the body, and then the back part. Okay. There's the first part. Next are your legs. And this is when it's really important to angle your pencil to the legs and then compare it to your drawing. So I'm going to start with the front two. Right? You can see it's starting to create that shape. Right? See how quickly this is when you get used to doing angles? A lot of times students will ask me, how do you draw so fast? Well, in college they had us do this. That we had to do a lot of angling, and they would only give us like 1 minute to draw the whole human figure. And you get used to learning how to draw very quickly. Okay? I mean, imagine if you were out in nature trying to draw something you quickly saw. Well, that animal's not going to stay in there and pose for you the whole time, so you have to learn how to draw quickly. Alright, so now I have the basic part. Now I need to clean it up and get some better shaping involved. So I'm going to go to my praying mantis, shape in the eyes, right? Kind of start cleaning up a little bit here and there. Sometimes as you're drawing, you realize you made a mistake, right? And normally you would draw lighter than what I'm doing so that you can erase it. For demonstration purposes, I am drawing a little darker so that it's easier for you, the viewer, to see. Okay. See, I kind of made a mistake there. That was too big. And as I was looking at it, I realized, oh wait, that's too big. So sometimes that happens. Artists make mistakes all the time. Art is all about correcting mistakes. All we do. When I do portraits of family members, it takes a while because I'm constantly going back and erasing and correcting just to make sure it's just right. So don't get discouraged if you accidentally make a mistake. You just correct it, because all artists correct their work. We all do it. So you can see as I'm doing this, I'm just trying to get basic shapes in so I can go back and add the little feelers and the spikes. Okay, like this really interesting shape here, creating this hook-like arm. And then we have the mid legs. Almost looks like a thigh right there. So I'm going to put in this shape. All right. I'm almost getting to the point where we can start cleaning up, but I'm almost there. Another bigger leg. It looks like I needed to take that out further. See, again, people make mistakes, right? It's how we do that. Okay. And almost ready. Okay. All right. Oops, missed a leg right there. See? This is what I'm saying. A lot of times we make mistakes. Okay. Other little things that I'm going to add are your spikes. This is what helps hook that little black widow. So they have these little spikes right here, like almost like they're claws, right? And it's throughout the piece. I'm going to show you a finished version. So what I do, and trust me, this drawing looked like that drawing. Okay, I had to go back, lightly erase, and clean up my lines, and of course sharpen my pencil so I can have cleaner looking lines for a more finished looking piece. And this is even still a little sketchy, but definitely a lot more cleaned up than that piece. So in here you can see all those little spikes, right? And little claws, and even that extra little claw, right? And then I cleaned up my antennas, added some details, and that helps to finish the praying mantis. We're going to move on to our frilled lizard. So these are out in Australia. They have this really interesting flap shape coming off the body, and so when they get into defensive mode, that normally it's tucked back, but when defensive mode it spits out. And it should remind you of that dinosaur that we saw in Jurassic Park, but that's kind of the idea here. The body shape should remind you of the iguana that we already have drawn, so that back leg shape especially. So this shouldn't be too difficult, it's more getting this shape just right. So I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to move this white part right here so I can, that way it's a little easier for me to figure out the angle. Okay, so I think the first part I'm going to do is the spine. In general, you go with the spine first, okay, and then up to the head, right? So I did the spine, the neck, and the head, okay, and then from there I have a tail shape, right? Now I can kind of fit in the body, and that will be corrected more as I go. Get in the leg, get in that part of the leg. Okay, so you can see how I kind of try to quickly do angles. And see, right now I can see I didn't put up the tail far back enough. Okay. So I can fit in that foot. We have erasers for a reason. They're there. Okay, now let's do this basic shape. All right, so I'm going to add this in. Okay, it kind of goes up and around and kind of flaps down, and then we have that shape. Let's go ahead and fit in this head. So you could start to see I'm creating the basic shape. I have the proportions, and now it's time to get more shaping in so we can get to a cleaner look. I'm going to start here with this leg. It has a muscle here, part of its chest, and then part of the elbow. Bring that down. Their talons, I have to say, are interesting. They're not, it's like if you were to look at a photo, this is how they look. It doesn't have, it's kind of weird random shaping. It's not what you would think. Right? Okay. Let's do this back leg. This back leg is so odd, right? Because it kind of tucks back like this. And I'm going to erase that axis line I put in so you can see. Oops. Alright. And then this back leg. Now look at these claws. Sorry. You'd think they'd go this way, right? Because of how these are. But instead they're clinching this way. Okay? So that's a unique feature. And we see that in the iguana as well. So it's an odd one. Odd, odd, odd. Okay. That's another basic shape. Let's get this part of the leg in. And again, they have weird legs. So if you were to look at this frilled lizard, you were to look it up, you'd say, huh, all right. So now that I have this part, I'm just going to kind of clean up some of my lines, erase those out, and I can start shaping this head. I generally start with the eye, move my way. And drawing, realistic drawing anyway, drawing from observation, is said to be 50% drawing and 50% observing. And I'd say that's about accurate because you're constantly looking back and forth to look at the actual shape of it. All right. So one of the things that I thought was interesting about this frilled lizard as well is even though it's in defense mode, it has a sleepy eye. If you were to look it up, their eye is not as wide open as you think it would be. I don't know why, but I would, I mean, if we were doing cartoon drawing, I have a feeling that in Disney they would probably make the eyes a lot more wide to emphasize that it's in defense mode. I'm just putting in a few little jagged teeth. They don't really have high teeth. It kind of reminds me of a chameleon. It's just kind of like grips almost. Alright, so now I'm going to work on this frilled part. So I want to start with this outside part. It kind of frills out, and the way it kind of reminds me of is an umbrella. It has these lines that web out like this, and then you kind of start creating this organic shape. It's not geometric. It should remind you of how a flower is, which means it's irregular. I do like this flap, so if you just add this part here and then go, oops, maybe I should erase it. What you do is you add a loop and then bring it back up and then put that part in. And you'll have a little fold. And that's kind of a neat little detail. Okay, so I'm at the point where I have a really distinct sketch and it's time to clean it up. So I would lightly erase it, sharpen my pencil, and clean it up so it looks more refined. One of the little details I added is these little sketchy lines, and you might think, what's that for? Well, if you were to look at a picture of a frilled lizard, there's colorations within here, so it kind of goes from dark to light to dark to light. So this is really just indicating the color changes within the frilling. Okay, and then of course I cleaned up the lines here to finish that piece. All right, that's part one. Next will be part two. Thank you.